Thank you for listening to Chart Your FI. I'm your host, Chris Elder. And today on Chart Your FI, we have evolved into an interview podcast that talks about goal planning, overcoming the odds, financial independence, and how it's not the end goal, but a means to find your purpose in life. And we talk about the not so common sense things in life. Stand by for the sound of freedom. Before we get to the Chart Your FI episode, I just wanted to do a quick shout out about Return to Roots podcast. It's about retention in the military, transition from the military, and reintegration into the community. This podcast is not just for the service member, but for the family unit as well. Also, anyone that wants to put action to their thank you for your service can find more information on this podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and many other social media networks. Thank you, and listen to the Chart Your FI episode now. In today's episode, we get the honor of talking with Kevin Sarbora. There's two clear passions when you listen to this episode, that is educating other realtors and serving the people around him. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I had fun recording it. Here we go. All right. So we are recording. All right, Kevin. So how did you get to where you're at with Design Realty?
How did I get to where I'm at? Okay. Well, I kind of stumbled into it. Let's see. Cliff Notes, 2015. I'm a cook running a restaurant, meet a beautiful woman, right? And she has experience in investment sales and real estate. And she, thought it would be a really good idea. My wife now, at this point, wife and mother of my children, right? She thought it would be a good idea for me to get my real estate license and give it a go. So I did. I went through the courses, got my license. We got pregnant very quickly after that. So, we needed to have some income, right? So we started doing everything that we could to try to generate sustainable revenue, repeat business, try to build a business out of, being a broker as opposed to just, piecemeal and friends and family deals here and there. So first year with networking groups and door knocking and, doing the beat your feet kind of stuff, did 12 deals, not too shabby. And out of that, those commissions, we started looking at how do we create a reliable return. So we started buying leads. Figure you're either investing time or money in this business. And I had invested some time and I had a young child and I wanted to spend more time there. So we started buying some leads and experimenting with how are we going to convert these leads? How do we handle the showings? And really kind of analyzed literally everything. We go out on an appointment. I go out on an appointment. I'd come back and we break it down. What did we do? What could we improve? What did we miss? How could this be better? And then we'd make a plan to experiment with, those things the next time we went out. So that worked pretty effectively for the next couple of years. And in 2018, got busy enough to the point where I needed some help, and so found a little office space 2 minutes from the house, signed a 3-year lease on it with the idea that we were going to just get a couple of helpers basically to take some of my burden off, and just crank basically, make a few $1,000,000 and then sit back and let that money work for us. But it turned out I was a better teacher than I thought, and so we had a couple of people inquire about hanging their license here, brought them in, started teaching them how to, do what I'm doing. And it started to work. They started to close deals. And so we decided this is probably the direction we should go. And then in 2019, we were running. That was like our first full year of operation of Design Realty, with an office, a team, and processes and people in place. And I closed 50 transactions by myself and almost, broke myself. Right. So, wanted to step back out of production. And we started to recruit and grow the office. COVID hit in 2020. That was a big turning point too. At that point in time, we had established a relationship with Zillow. We were buying leads from Zillow, working on converting those leads and working on our processes. And I think we were on our third iteration of a CRM at that point in time. And COVID opened up a huge opportunity for us because we were able to get a really sweet deal. Zillow, they halved their price on leads if you kept with them, right? And a lot of people dropped out because they thought COVID was going to be the end days. Real estate in Washington was not an essential business, so we were all locked up in our houses, right? So all these real estate brokers dropped their ad spend on Zillow, and we said, screw it, let's buy it. And so we ended up buying a huge chunk of some of the most high-priced zip codes in the area, Kirkland, Bellevue, area on the east side, million plus areas. And that really kind of cemented our foothold on the east side. And we just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. And every time we'd have a big month, we'd pour more money into it, pour more money into the systems until we got to the point where you're spending, $75,000 a month on just lead generation alone. So we had a pretty well established team at that point in time, and rolled into 2022 with 8 brokers, and we're rolling into 2023 with 27 brokers now. So we've been growing pretty good clip, and the defining thing that we've done, that I think has led us to be successful is we care about our people. We treat our people really, really well. And that means we let them get paid, and we're nice to them.
Imagine that, being nice to someone, being nice to your employees. It's kind of like a lot of people are like, oh, money, money, money. I hire people, they're making me money. No, but it sounds like you're hiring them and then you're making them money because you're like, hey, I'm bringing you in, I'm teaching you, I'm allowing you to actually make a good chunk of the change. So, which is a change because a lot of the realty companies, that's not how it is.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
A lot of brokers look at a real estate agent as like a disposable, peon, basically. Like, okay, yeah, you come in, you crank, you grind, and hopefully you close a couple deals, right? I look at it as that's an important commodity you have. That real estate license is, allows you to do something that somebody else can't do. And so if you're willing to come work for me, I look at it, and my wife looks at it as, we're working for you. And so we're going to do as much as we can to educate and train you so that you can be a highly productive broker, make yourself a lot of money. And as you make money, we will make money.
So I'm kind of perusing your website. You even have core values. You have you actually have a clear, effective communication towards hiring people as well. Because you're not just on your website, you're not just trying to sell homes, but you're also trying to build relationships with your employees as well as those who you represent as well. So that's pretty badass. And then to hear like, hey, I went from cook to realtor, kind of figuring this out, and then me and my wife would sit here and we would powwow about what we did and how we did it, and we would just get better and better and better at it every single time. Not just lessons forgotten, but lessons learned from every single real estate transaction that you did, or every single showing that you did. It sounds like
every interaction, if there's so much to learn, and if you can't analyze what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and you got too big of an ego to look at something that you may have done incorrectly or change something, then you're not going to improve, and that's one of our core values, right? We had those because when we started setting this thing up, we brought in a family friend who had a successful plumbing business, and he said the first thing you got to do is figure out who the hell you want to be. And that comes from your values. So put your values down on paper and stick to them.
Exactly, man. And It's great that you talk about this stuff because most of the realtors, they don't even talk about their employees. And it looks like you're not part of Century or anything like that. You're your own organization, correct?
Well, we have a parent brokerage,
Okay.
Professional Realty Services. So I have two offices. I have one in Snohomish and one in downtown Kirkland. And so we are branch offices of Professional Realty Services, and they're actually a local company. They're headquartered out of Spokane. They're multi-state licensed all across the West. And the reason that we, decided to partner with them rather than say a Century 21 or a Keller Williams or whoever the hell else, Real is the hot new one, I believe, and Compass, right? We align, our values align with J.W. Webb, who's the founder, and John Anderson, the president, where it is client and people first always, and then they're very, very, very big on understanding the contract end of it, the process end of it, and stand in the lines and the legal lines, right? And I mean, there's so many you would see the dumpster fire contracts that get sent to me by brokers who have 25 years experience, man. It is ridiculous. So it's nice to be, with an organization that shares some of those values with us.
So, both you and your wife run Design Realty, and along with a team of how many brokers again?
So it's my wife runs pretty much the business end of it and the system and systems and processes. She's in our CRM developing workflows and working with people to see what they need on a constant daily basis, kind of running a little bit more of the business end of it. I am the managing broker. I hold the managing broker's license. I'm the resident member of the office, and I handle all of the the real estate related stuff, real estate questions, the broker questions, the transaction management, those types of things. We have a full-time director of operations who handles, most of the day-to-day office and needs of the brokers. We have a full-time employee who is a listing coordinator who is responsible for prepping, staging, making sure that contractors and vendors are at the listings and that the listings are maintained in perfect condition, even if they're 6 months on the market. We're doing weekly checks to make sure the bugs are swept and the pine needles are swept and it looks like show ready. So that's kind of our full-time staff. And then we have 26 licensed brokers that hang their license with us. 25 of them are on our production team. And then we have one or two brokers who are hanging their license with us outside of our production team. So they're not receiving leads from us, but they like the benefits that we provide. So they're still hanging out with us.
Nice, man. So, from cook to realtor to business owner, and what's next? What are you striving for next? Because I doubt that's like where you want to head your bets at.
Well, kick-ass dad is, one thing that I am pretty high on being, right? So I'm blessed enough to be able to wake up, cook my kids breakfast every morning, take them to school, be home when they get home. I don't really work late anymore, which is really, really nice. So that's a huge, huge priority for me to be involved in my kids' lives, especially when they're young, 4 and 6. You don't get that time back. But then as far as, business goes, we have 2 offices and I want to fill them out. I want to, grow my agent count. We want to work on increasing the conversion rate. We have a 7% conversion rate on, paid leads, which is pretty darn good. And we want to get that up to 10% this year. We've got some people who are converting at 16%, 13%. So it's definitely doable. And we want to refine those techniques. We want to document those techniques. Last year, we churned out about 600 pages worth of training material. And we created an online training system to complement, the state test. When you come and sign up with us, you go through another 60, 70, 80 hours worth of training online as well. And so we have, our goal this year is to refine that, improve it, refine the actual sales process so that it becomes a trainable, memorable process that can be repeated. and then grow the agent count to fill our offices out this year. And in the years beyond 2024, 2025, most likely expand regionally, north and south along the Puget Sound, so that we can start growing a regional presence, and then, potentially, expand into other regions as well. Anywhere that has a $500,000 plus price point, our model works.
Nice, nice, man. So what along your venture of growing a company and working with realtors, not only realtors but working with clients, what is kind of one of your biggest things that you kind of noticed with some of your clients, like some of the misconceptions out there?
Well, they don't really know what they're doing most of the time, and it's not their fault. There's so much information on the internet. You can look up, do I need an inspection? And if you want to have an inspection, you can find plenty of reasons to back that position up. You can find plenty of reasons to not back that position, right? There's just so much information. The information overload is incredible. A lot of people don't know where to start looking for information. A lot of people have worked with real estate brokers in the past, right? If they're not a first-time home buyer, they've bought a home before, they've sold a home before, they've been through the process most likely. But 90% of brokers don't know what they're doing because there's no training. You get your license and you go to a firm and you hang your license at an office, and they may offer a 9 a.m. contract study review, but that's generally with somebody who learned through an apprenticeship style program before too. So really it's very much a murky, kind of dirty pool that we want to shine a light through. And so one of the things that we tell our brokers is to get comfortable with the fact that you're a door opener, right? I hear real estate brokers left and right say, I am so much more than a door opener. And you know what? To the client, you're not when you first meet them. That is your value, is you have a key to get them in the home that they want to see, right? And so if you can accept that and be comfortable with that and not try to explain how you're going to negotiate and how you're going to represent them and all this kind of stuff, somebody who doesn't really know what they're getting into doesn't want to hear that stuff right off the bat. They're like, whoa, I can negotiate. I make $300,000 a year. I'm a big wig at my company. I know what I'm doing, right? Sorry, bub, you don't. I'm a real estate broker who, I sold 186 homes last year. I tried to negotiate a commercial lease, and holy shit, I had no clue what I was doing. I had to hire a commercial agent, because I didn't know what the commissions were. I didn't know it was standard. I didn't know what tenant improvements to ask for, because that's not my field, right? And I'm in the real estate field. So people don't know what to expect. And so we really try to take the pressure off of them and just let them see what's going on, and then educate them along the way. I think that's, something that we've found is really important.
Yeah, I'm just cracking up about the whole entire, when I buy a commercial property, you're like, I had to hire a commercial real estate agent, and that's a whole entire another realm. There's metrics and all that stuff that when it comes to commercial real estate, like whenever you're buying it, there's like all these like, hey, well, this property is like at this price point makes you this much money. And that's like an aspect on it as well. I've been looking at some of that, and I've been doing my own research on it, and shoot, I own a couple properties, man, and I've been involved in a couple of different deals, and I still, and I don't even know what the heck I'm looking at half the time. It is a lot of reading and a lot of research on your ends, but here's the thing, like if you are going to buy a property, you have to trust your realtor. Now, if you got to trust your gut feeling. I tell everybody, I'm like, trust your gut feeling. If you don't trust the person that's there in front of you, go find another one.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, go find another one, and and sometimes like when your realtor tells you no on something, they probably know what they're talking about. Like, hey, this is not a good deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. You have to trust your broker. And if you don't trust your broker, you got to go find a broker you trust,
Yes.
because it's like, I quit giving people charity business. If you want to help somebody out, write them a check. Find somebody who can help you out. I mean, that's people work with brand new nieces, brand new nephews, somebody, a family member who doesn't have any transactional volume under their belt because they're like, oh, well, I want to help them get the commission. And you might as well just write them a check. Write them a check, give them a check, write them $20,000 check, and then go find somebody who's going to help you get $50,000 off that house,
Yeah.
because you got to have protection in this industry.
Yeah. What are some of the, like, if you had to pick like three things whenever a family's buying a house, what are some of the things that you always tell them that, hey, you might want to be aware of this? And I'll throw one out, like schools. Look at your school districts.
Oh yeah, schools are really important. If you, and it's not even just for people with kids, but school districts will completely affect the value of your home. You've got around here in Washington, right down in Renton, for instance, there's the Renton Highlands, right? And you have a portion of the Renton Highlands that is in the Issaquah School District, which is a much, much higher rated school district. And so, if you're straddling that line between the Renton School District and the Issaquah School District, the homes over in the Issaquah School District are going to be higher values. The homes in the Renton School District are going to be lower values. And you can't use the two as comps really, because, they have different schools that they're feeding into. And so that's affecting the value of the property, because people with kids want to be in the better school district generally. If you buy a home in an area with a poor school district, it can affect the resale down the road. It may look like a bargain, because nobody wants to buy it. So schools are definitely a big thing to look at when you're purchasing a home. One of the questions I always ask people is, is this a forever home, or is this, a transitional home, right? Because if you're buying something funky, a weird floor plan or something that you think is cool, but doesn't really conform with the neighborhood or doesn't really appeal to a broad amount of people, you don't want to buy that home if you're planning on selling it in 3 or 4 years, because you could run into problems down the road selling it, when you're trying to trade up into something else, right? I mean, if you're buying something, you're planning on being there 10, 15 years, do whatever the hell you want. Get it on a busy road, buy something with a bedroom through another bedroom, that's fine. But if you're looking at a 3-year, and then I want to sell it and trade up, take that equity and go buy something else, then, realistically, you should be buying something a little bit more cookie cutter that appeals to a broader base of people. Then lastly, I think the biggest thing is to understand the process and understand what contingencies are, and understand that you have two types of defects in homes. You have material defects, which are physical problems with the home, a bad roof, bad siding, crack in the foundation, galvanized plumbing that's rotting from the inside, right? Those are all material defects that we can uncover through the use of an inspection contingency, a home inspection, bringing in specialized inspectors to inspect certain systems. We can figure out what's going on with the home materially that way. And everybody kind of knows that. Everybody's heard about home inspections before, but just as big of an issue are latent defects. And those are going to be issues with the chain of title, right? Maybe a neighbor is encroaching on your property and you don't know it. Maybe there is a drain field easement that is, on a nice open patch of grass that you're like, I want to put a shop there. Well, if there's a drain field easement, you can't, right? So it's really, really important to review the chain of title and have your broker review the chain of title, point out any red flags for the use that you're trying to do. And if you have a complicated chain of title, then, I mean, it's even worth it to have an attorney review it if you're trying to do specific things with that land. Because the last thing you want to have happen is purchase a piece of land thinking you're going to use it for a certain use, and then finding out as you go to apply for permits that you can't do that, and you could have caught that if your broker had looked at it.
Man. So personally, I've used my VA loan a couple different times. What is your thoughts on the VA loan, man? Is that really I have my own opinion, and I'm just gonna ask this generic question a little bit. Is it is it worth using your VA loan?
The VA loan is the best lending product on the market. It is absolutely the best loan you can possibly use. And I've heard veterans before say, I don't want to use it. I don't want to use it. I even heard somebody say that they didn't want to use it because they didn't want to take advantage of the system. And I'm going to say they're fucking taking advantage of you. Take advantage of the best thing that the government has ever done for veterans and active duty military, which is give them that VA loan. And the reason why it's such a good lending product is because it is zero out of pocket, zero down. You can buy a home with zero down, up to $3 million. You can go up to $3 million on a VA loan, nothing out of pocket. And you get a phenomenal rate. You get the government rate, the same base rate that an FHA loan gets, that a USDA loan gets, but you don't have mortgage insurance. And so you actually get that super sweet, super killer rate. You don't have to use money out of pocket, and you can use it multiple times. It's not a one and done type thing. You can use it a bunch of times. It's an incredible tool to start to build wealth. And I don't think enough people know about it as far as being able to use it repeatedly and how you can build wealth through the use of the VA loan.
So that's like one thing that a lot of people don't understand. You buy a home, you live in it for a little bit, then you refinance it, open up your VA loan again, buy another home, and you keep leveraging that money over and over and over again. And that's one way that a lot of people maximize their use with the VA loan. I know the first home I bought, I didn't even really know about my VA loan. I heard about it, but this is 2007. Didn't really ever hear about it. And I bought this home that I should never been able to buy. Wish I would have used my VA loan, because I had to come down with money, and then I got one of those ballooning. Oh my goodness, I should have never qualified for this, man. But I did. I held on to it for a while. And then when I did, I bought another property. I actually used my VA loan. I had it available. Um, that thing worked out really well, man. And I tell everybody, I'm like, hey, you can use your VA loan over and over and over again, and you could even use it while you still have another VA loan active.
Yep.
You get a portion of that. They'll take that 3 million. They'll take the value that you have. They'll minus it. They'll come up with some weird number. You may have to come down with a little bit on the other property if you have another VA loan, but it's going to be a guaranteed home loan. So it's still a better product than what you're going to get elsewhere. And a lot of people don't know that. And they have loans that help people build homes. They have loans that help people buy commercial real estate. They have loans that help people buy just their forever home. It doesn't have to be your forever home. And I tell everybody, I'm like, hey, treat the home as if it's going to be your forever home, but it's always a transitional home until, later on in life, you should use that to leverage yourself up into the next thing,
Absolutely. The home equity, is your best tool to build wealth. And like you said, you buy something with the VA loan, zero down, so you're at 100% financing. You live in it for a few years, you gain equity, and suddenly your loan to value, your house is worth more than you owe on it. And so you can refinance it into say a 90% loan to value conventional loan, or a 20% down conventional loan if you want to avoid mortgage insurance, right? And once you free that back up, boom, you can go right back out and snatch up another place zero down. And so you're buying houses left and right, and you're not coming out of pocket with any money. The one thing you got to deal with is a VA funding fee, but really often you can get the seller to cover the whole portion of that.
Yeah. And that's like one of the coolest tools ever. Um, I, you know, so let's say a lot of people are like, oh, well, BCU or not BCU, but wow, BCU. Sorry, BCU. I actually like you. Um, they talk about like Navy Federal. They
Oh,
talk about yeah, they talk about what's the Armed Forces? What's that other bank?
USAA,
Oh,
Navy Federal,
oh my,
Veterans United, one of my favorites. Not.
they. So I've never used them for any house buying. They've never helped me out. I know that from personal experience. And a lot of people are like, well, Navy Federal won't give me a loan. So that way I shouldn't buy the house. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Why are you saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Honestly, I look at these companies as predatory. Veterans are, a group of people that are preyed upon, kind of like senior citizens, right? You have people who are transient. You get moved all around the country. You don't have roots in your neighborhood that you grew up in, oftentimes, and you're buying a home in a place where you have no connection to. You don't know the state laws there. You don't know anything there, right? And the only thing that's familiar is that Veterans United, Navy Federal, and USAA are sending you fucking mail left and right and emailing you left and right because they know you're in the military and they're the ones marketing to you. These are privately owned companies that have absolutely nothing to do with the federal government or the Department of Defense, right? They are privately owned and they named themselves Navy Federal. They have nothing to do with the Navy and they have nothing to do with the federal government. Veterans United, they have nothing to do with the VA. Yet they pick these names so they can make veterans trust them. To me, it is one of the most disgusting things you could possibly do. The VA loan can be issued by any lender. You do not have to be a special VA lender, right? Your local mortgage broker, your local bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the local lender down the street on the corner, they all do VA loans. And I always tell everybody, a local lender is going to be way better than a guy sitting in a call center in Delaware because you can actually reach them. The lenders that we work with here, we have a wonderful lending partner, Mike Colagrassi with NFM Lending. He's got a vacation home out in Eastern Washington on Lake Usius, and he will answer the phone at 8 p.m. at night on a Sunday while he's out there with his family to talk to you and walk you through the programs. That's what you want, right? You don't want an office number for some brand new rookie loan officer who's sitting in a call center who's going to promise you the moon and then hand you off to a processor, because that's what they do. They originate the loan, they get you to sign the application, send in your $1,000, you're paying for it, great, we got our hooks in you now. Now they dump you off to somebody else, and that person is dealing with 3, 4, 5 times the amount of files than even the loan originator was doing, and you get lost in the wash. We recently had I think it was Veterans United, but I don't sue me, okay? Because so I'm not saying it's a guaranteed Veterans United issue, but one of these large companies didn't realize that the property that they were lending on was a condominium, even though it says on the purchase and sale agreement it's a condominium, and in the legal description it's a condominium. And this got all the way to a week before closing before they found this issue out. Delayed closing by multiple weeks. Client had to pay for a rate lock extension, and it's just they lose you in the wash. They prey on veterans, and you can tell I do not like working with these companies, and I find it to be predatory that they chase veterans in this manner and make them feel like they're the only option.
Yeah. And I've experienced that too. It's like, and it's not just with home loans. It's also with auto loans and other things. Everybody's like, "Oh, Navy Federal, go get your auto loan." I'm like, you get pre-approved through them if you want. Then go over to the Toyota dealership or Honda dealership if that's what you're going to do. You're going to buy a car with financing. go to them and ask them, hey, this is what Navy Fed says. Can you beat this? And 9 times out of 10, actually 10 times out of 10 for me, they've always beat it. And there's nothing wrong with financing a car. I say finance it, then pay that sucker off. You just boosted your credit score up a little bit more. I, I don't see why not do that. But like these companies, they are predatory against military. In my opinion, I'm not a big fan of any one of them. I just lost my potential of ever getting Navy Federal for any of my podcasts. Uh, but I'm not a big fan of them. BECU though, the Boeing's Employees Credit Union, I've had a great experience with them because every time I go in there, I get actual people. Navy Federal, it's not, yeah, like you said, there's, yeah, the branches may have people on them, but they're not the same people over and over again. It's a transient population that's inside of them as well.
Yeah, those, I mean, they don't pay well. So, just for reference, like, um, they get paid off of the loan value, right? And a normal loan officer, normal loan originator will generally make somewhere in the realm of 100 basis points, which is like 1%, right? So you got a $500,000 loan, a normal loan originator is usually making around $5,000 on that. These guys make like 30 basis points. So they make like a third of a percent, right? So, they do a lot of volume in order to make up for that. But typically it's a starting point. It's not a long-term career. And if it is a long-term career for somebody, if somebody's been with these companies for a long time, I don't want to say they're all terrible. I mean, I've actually had some good experiences with good loan officers and good processors, because if they actually know what they're doing and they're doing a high volume and they actually care, then they can do a good job. But it's few and far between. And if they're doing it for a long time, they have to do so many more deals to be able to make the same amount of money, which means they're on the phone with other clients when you're calling. They're burnout. They don't want to give you their cell phone number because they don't want, 100 clients calling them on Saturday night, right? And some of them even have company policies that they can't give their cell phone numbers out. So it's just always, in my opinion, a much better option, no matter where you live, whether you're in Washington, California, or Georgia, Florida. It doesn't matter. There are local lenders who can do VA loans, and that is always the better option.
It's funny, you just kind of sparked a memory from back in the pandemic. Right when everybody was trying to refinance, remember all those super low rates that were happening? And you know, we were in the middle of refinancing, and my goodness, like it's like everybody started quitting their jobs during that time frame. You remember that? And it was like,
I sure do.
and it was like, just like, are you serious? Like, I'm sitting here waiting on financing because people are literally quitting their jobs. And a lot of those brokerages that weren't treating their employees good were losing their people.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had people who were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on, remote working setups, right? And having to lay off, most of their workforce, and then like the everything has to get recorded at the county. The county offices were closed.
Yeah.
So, and then finally they let a few of them back in. They were in King County up here in, Seattle, Washington, where King County, they had like an eighth of the normal staffing at the King County Recorder's Office during this time. So it was just nuts, from literally the ground to the ceiling. Everything had to change. It was a wild time.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy time because I was in the middle of refinancing 2 properties at that time, man. It was crazy. Plus, that's also when we had our house fire too. So it's like, oh yeah, that was that was a mess, man. Trying to rebuild during a house fire, man. And the pandemic, and oh yeah, it was insane.
And lumber prices, quadrupled.
Oh yeah, like, oh, don't even get me started. It's like yesterday it wasn't that much. How come? They're like, oh, blah blah blah, and I'm like all these people were like, oh, I'm at home, I'm gonna start doing projects. I'm like, damn it, you know. So it's funny because a lot of people are like, hey, uh, if I buy a home, I need to save up money to buy a home. Like a lot of people think that that's what you need to do to buy a home. And I tell people, I'm like, hey, if you're waiting, like, I get it. Hey, you should have your emergency savings. You should have your X amount of money. And a lot of people were like, well, Dave Ramsey says I should be blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, man, you don't need to be, you don't need to save your entire amount of money to go buy a house. A lot of people are like, oh, well, Dave Ramsey says I should save up to buy a house.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey says don't take on debt. Dave Ramsey doesn't have to take on debt. Dave Ramsey makes a lot of money telling people not to take on debt.
He sells the story of how he took on debt and then got his shirt handed to him. That's the story that he sells.
I mean, it's to be honest. I mean, like, I get it. I get the ideas behind it, right? Be financially responsible and don't over stretch yourself, right? These are all really, really important things, right? But I think a lot of his, and it's not just Dave, right? There's a lot of different other people out there who are saying, the same message, but it's kind of a bit of an older, outdated message. Homes used to be $150,000. I mean, in the late 80s, my folks bought a 3,300 square foot 2-story home for $165,000, right? That's a very reasonable price, and you don't have to necessarily go take on a massive amount of debt to do something like that, right? Before the, Frank Dodd regulations changed after the crash in 2008, you could walk into a bank and tell them how much money you made, and they'd give you a loan, right? Like, so you could completely overstretch yourself. Nowadays, you can't. There are debt to income ratio requirements for loans, and most loans you can't go above anywhere from 43 to 48% debt to income. You cannot have 50% of your pre-tax income dedicated to debt, whether that be car payments, credit card payments, mortgage payments, any of that crap. They look at your debt to income and they say, no, you cannot do this. We will not give you the loan because you have such a higher risk of default if you're spending all your money on your mortgage. So is it good to save up money to buy a home? There's pluses and minuses, right? Saving up cash, you made a hugely important point. As a homeowner, there's no landlord who's coming to fix the water leak. There's no landlord coming to patch the roof, and there's no landlord coming to replace that dryer or the washer when it craps out. That's on you. And so you better have some cash sitting aside for, homeowner shit that happens, because homeowner shit happens. You get damaged, you have to do stuff, and you can be put in the poorhouse real quick if you don't have anything, right? One of the other reasons why you need a little bit of cash is if you want to avoid mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is, it can be anywhere from, 30, 40, 50 bucks a month to $400, $500, $600 a month in additional payments on top of your principal and interest. And if you can get to an 80% loan to value product, which is your old school typical 20% down payment, at a 20% down payment, you don't have mortgage insurance. So that can help you afford more house because you're not spending money on the mortgage insurance. But really, what you need to look at is what can you afford on a monthly basis? That's all you got to worry about. It's a monthly mortgage payment. I don't know anybody who buys a home on a 30-year fixed mortgage and then stays there for 30 years, pays off the home, and dies happily with grandma and kids sitting there, right? That just doesn't happen anymore. The average home, the average home is sold every 7 years, but we have these 30-year fixed terms. So look at what you can afford. If you make $10,000 a month pre-tax, I'm using big round numbers because it's nice and neat. It's $120,000 a year salary, right? You make 10,000 bucks a month, then you will be allowed to borrow by the bank roughly $4,800, maybe $4,700 a month. Now, I'm guessing if you make $10,000 a month, you don't want a $4,800 mortgage payment, right? So most people can typically afford more house than they want to. So you got to look at what's the payment I want to pay? What can I afford, right? And if that's a $3,500 a month payment, then we just got to go look and see what can I afford with a $3,500 a month payment. And if you have zero down and you're using a VA loan, for instance, well, that's a great situation. You're not going to have mortgage insurance, period, right? So then you just get to go talk to your lender and you say, here's what I want to afford on a monthly basis. Then you can work out the price of home you're looking at, right? So that's kind of how I would suggest you do things, is look at what do you want to pay per month? What can you afford? And then from there, we can figure out what is the price of home that you want to buy. And VA is not the only zero down option out there. Washington State has a bond program that is essentially a second mortgage that goes on top of your first mortgage that it pays for your down payment. Bank of America has an amazing grant program. It's not zero down payment, but it is down payment assistance. If you buy in low or middle income areas, they'll give you $17,500 in free grant money that you don't have to repay. They'll pay for $10,000 on your down payment and $7,500 on your closing costs. So there are some income restrictions, but that's an incredible program too, because you don't have to repay that. It goes on top of any loan. The government has another loan program, USDA, Department of Agriculture. So if you're buying in a rural area, a USDA loan is oftentimes available to you. So there are zero down programs aside from the VA loan. There are very low down payment programs. FHA loan, which is your standard kind of first time homebuyers product, is a 3.5% down payment. And then there are conventional loan programs. I just saw one released recently that is zero down, conventional, 100% conventional financing. They have 1%, 1% down. They have 3% down. They have 5% down. There are so many different loan programs that will allow you to get into a home for very little out of pocket. And as long as you can afford that monthly payment, and you're not stretching yourself to the bone, and you're not leaving yourself with top ramen, pantry diet kind of money here, then you're okay. Because in most areas, you'll see your equity go up. You will see home prices rise in most cases, right? In the short term, sometimes maybe not, but over the long term, you will see your home price increase for the most part. And that means that you can, if you have a conventional loan product, you can eventually drop that mortgage insurance off, reduce your payment. And then you can use the equity that you've gained and you can trade up into bigger and better homes. So no, I don't think you need to save up 20% down before you buy. Usually by the time somebody saves up 20% down, home prices have increased to the point where they're now unaffordable for that person.
Yeah, and man, you just dropped a whole bunch of knowledge about these grants and stuff like that. So I kind of want to reiterate, you're talking about the Washington State had bonds that will help you put additional money on top of your loan. So you still have to pay that one back if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct. Yeah, you got to pay that one back, and it's generally at a higher interest rate. So it raises your total APR to a higher interest rate. But if you can afford the payment, remember, that's all that matters, right? I don't care what the damn interest rate is. It's about the payment. If you can afford the payment, then you're okay, right? So you may have a higher interest rate, but generally you can refinance that, especially like the down payment assistance program where there are bonds, because that second mortgage is at a much higher interest rate. So your overall interest rate is increased. And once you get some equity, you can refinance out of that to a better interest rate. So that's a really, really good program. And I know a lot of states have a very similar down payment assistance program.
Yeah. And then you talked about the Bank of America, BOA. I call them BOA.
Yeah.
BOA constrictor. Sometimes they're all right, but sometimes they constrict you.
Yes.
They have a grant. They help you find a grant for $17,500, and you said 10 grand on the loan, and then 700 or 7,500 for closing costs. That's pretty good. I want to reiterate this stuff because these are this is it's important to know, hey, if you do a little bit of research and if you have a realtor and a lender that's actually worth their grit, they're gonna know all these.
They
They're gonna-
should.
Yeah, they're
That's
gonna.
one of the things we talk about constantly in our meetings is what lending products are out there right now, because they change all the time. They're introducing 40-year interest only loans again. That's fun. Yeah, right. But the Bank of America program is so great, and a lot of real estate brokers and a lot of people are kind of sour on Bank of America and big banks, and the reality is yeah, they take a little bit longer sometimes, right? But it's not like the old days where you had to wait 90 days to get an appraisal for a Bank of America loan. They actually move pretty quickly, and if you have a good loan officer there, it can work just fine. And the program is so great because it's free money. It's free money. You do not have to repay it. It's a grant that comes to you, and so it's a great option. It goes on top of any loan. It can go on top of an FHA loan. It can go on top of a conventional loan. It can go on top of a VA loan. I mean, you could put money down with a VA loan too. It's just you don't have to. So it's a really, really good program, and I would suggest that people who have little out of pocket, little money out of pocket, you could buy. I had a buddy buy a house in Marysville, a $360,000 house, and he was less than $6,000 out of pocket.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty powerful, especially if it's one of your first houses that you ever bought. Just kind of getting over the hump. I tell people, hey, look, housing housing can be an investment. Um, it can be, and not every house is going to be a really good investment. Because, for example, I tell people, and I'm giving out my secret here: multifamily homes, anything that has a mother-in-law, anything that you could rent out short term, anything that you can rent out long term. If you can find a property like that, it will propel you quicker into another house.
Yeah, a
Because
lot of
yeah,
a lot of
because
people don't realize you can buy up to a fourplex with a normal conforming loan. So
mhm,
your VA loan, you can go buy a fourplex. You can buy a duplex. Like you said, a home with an accessory dwelling unit. Those are hugely good, ways to increase wealth very quickly because you can just have people start paying your mortgage payment immediately.
yeah. And you could like even look up like you go to what is it? Furnished homes or something like that, and you could register travel nurses, you could even advertise on military bases, around military bases, be like, hey, are you moving to this area? You need transitional housing. I have a fully furnished house. You could have fully furnished houses and then advertise it towards those people that need help, you know?
So, a fun little story. And I knew a guy who knew a guy, right? So this is telephone that happened here.
Yes. I like it.
But there's a base that airmen have to go to qualify or to requalify like every, I don't know, however many years, right? And so this dude knew that, and he started buying up some big houses around that base. And what he would do is outfit them for young men, right? Melamine everything, tough as fucking nails, stuff that's going to take abuse, Xboxes in every room, beer pong tables, literally everything that, somebody in their 20s or 30s who doesn't have a family is going to want, right? And government pays that rent. And so he figured out what did they pay? And that's what he charged. And he would stick 8 airmen in these homes and collect that stipend all year long. And everybody wanted to rent from him because he was the dude who had the cool party house and he was just raking it in. So if you can find a little niche like the travel nurses too, that's a great option. Anything that is around a hospital, a military base, anything where oil refineries too, right? uh, Hell, even hydroelectric dams, they've constantly got people coming in, cycling through that need short-term, mid-term kind of housing. And you can make a lot of money off of that because oftentimes it's not the tenant paying the rent, it's the institution.
Exactly. And That's why a little bit of research on these homes that you do buy, like for example, if you're buying near Everett, you know there's a there's an airport in Everett, and that airport's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So short term rentals there actually make sense. Or if you live next to the University of Washington over there in Bothell, hey, there's going to be college students that needs rooms because there's no dorms on campus over there. They're going to need rooms. They're going to need places to stay, and
Mhm.
and you could actually attract like veterans are going to go to school there because there's actually quite a few veterans. You could actually go onto if I'm not mistaken, there's a website. Man, I'm blanking it, but you could actually go on, and it's a military website for us to look at ratings of schools, and you could actually see the population of military in each one of these schools. You could look at the E5 BAH rate for each one of those schools, and then market your rent towards those E5 rates, because that's what everybody that's getting out of the military is going to get whenever they go to school. They get the E5 BAH rate. And if you could find a way to market it towards that and be like, are you military? Are you going to school? This is the perfect temporary housing for you. Like, just going in there and like actually doing a little bit of research, a little bit of grind, and you can make these properties turn some good profit on you.
Yeah, and that's in a market that maybe doesn't really cash flow if you stick a long-term normal tenant in there, right? Because you're able to kind of not exploit the system, but you're just doing a little bit of research. You're finding out, how can I make the most amount of money out of this house, and then set it up properly too. It's like, don't remodel it with $45,000 custom cabinets and then rent it out to a bunch of Marines and sailors getting out of the military ready to go to school.
Yeah,
If you're going to rent it out to people who are in their 20s and 30s, build it for people in their 20s and 30s.
yeah. Build it to where it's going to last. Build it to where your money goes further. Um, and it's been such an amazing journey that Sarah and I have had on, and I want to hit that because your partner in whatever you do is one of the biggest investments that you can make. I tell
Mhm.
people, hey, you can do whatever you want, but if your partner's fighting you on everything, and if you're not working with your partner and you're not actually treating as a team, then you're gonna be hurting. You're not gonna you're spinning your wheels. Like, imagine if you were a vehicle, right? You have four wheels, and you're trying to climb up a muddy ass trail. If only two of the wheels work, you're gonna get stuck in the mud. You both have your part to play. So that's like one of the biggest things. If Sarah wasn't equally into this as I was, or and she's my business. I'm the swinger of hammer, and she's the business end on it. So it's funny how we we have the same thing here.
My wife's name is Sarah too.
Oh,
And it's exactly, I mean, it's you're dead on right. I mean, like, there's no way in hell that I would be here, that this organization would be here, if it wasn't for her. Because she's a highly capable businesswoman, and she's my partner, and she does a lot of things that I don't have time to do, that I don't really have the um, background and knowledge to do, the patience to do. I'm ADHD. I am all over the board, which is good in some senses, but when you're looking at the books, it ain't right. So, there's no way I'd be able to hire somebody and pay them a commensurate wage to be able to do the job that she's doing. And so that's been able to, we're able to use each other to get where we've been so far, and that's benefited both of us, and will continue to.
yeah. Hey, if somebody's interested in being a realtor, um, what would you say the first step would be?
Um, Reconsider. really reconsider and think about it. Because I mean, a lot of people think about getting into this industry because they see big commissions, and that's why 88% of people don't make it. Right, over 80% of people do not renew their license after 2 years, which is one of the highest washout rates of any industry. Right, it's really, really not easy to succeed. So you got to go into it for the right reasons, right? And you have to go into it with the right mentality, and you have to go into it with the right financial situation too. If you get into, being a real estate broker and you have no reserves and you're trying to work a job while you're trying to do it, good luck, because while you're at your job, somebody's wanting to see a home, and if you're not able to show it to them, you lost that client, right? And so now you're back at your job again. I think that if you have the right mindset and the right mentality entering it, then you can be successful. But you need to find a support system, and you need to find a mentor, and you need to find, frankly, somebody who's going to take you under their wing and help develop you. And so you have to be ready to give up some of your paycheck, because guess what? I ain't doing it for free, and nobody else is going to do it for free either. So if you're not willing to work your ass off, and I'm talking 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, sometimes even more, right? You have to, and you have to be invested in learning too. The biggest struggle I see people run into is coming from a world where you have a boss and a job and a time clock. You're a W-2 employee, and suddenly you transition out of that, and now you're an independent contractor. You're your own boss, and you got nothing to help you figure that out. So time management and how to manage your own time, how to keep yourself busy, how to structure your own time management, and then also how to give yourself time off. That's the biggest struggle I see with new real estate brokers. And so that's something to consider. Go into it with the right mindset. It's not all about the money. It's about getting some transactional experience under your belt so you can generate clients. And then I would say find a team. It's very tough to do it on your own. If you join a team, a high quality team, and if they treat you well, then that's a good way to catapult yourself into success.
Bro, I cannot agree with you anymore. A passion for doing real estate is super important, because you're not going to be a service to anybody if you're doing it for the wrong reason. If you're going after the dollar, people are going to know that. Your clients are going to know that. Your employers are going to know that. They're going to be like, well, there's Bob. He's chasing a freaking dollar again. He's not treating these people well. Look, I just got a review here, and the guy's like, oh, you're not going for that multi-million-dollar property, so no, I'm not going to talk to you. Like, it's super important to be not only passionate about what you do if you're going to do a job like that, but also to find that mentor. You hit that right on the nail. And it doesn't have to be in the same thing. Actually, I recommend that you find a mentor that does not work in the same company as you, because they could give you a different perspective outside. Like, oh man, my boss was blah blah blah, and then the mentor's like, well, maybe you need to work on something. Like, hey, maybe you need to wake up a little bit early and get to work on it a little bit earlier. Hey, oh, my boss, he doesn't let me blah blah blah. Like, hey, well, how about you look at it like this? And then they're like, okay, I understand. So that's why I always tell, hey, necessarily don't work for your mentors, don't work with your mentors. Find a mentor outside of your company, but within the same realm. So I I'm so glad that you came on here, man. And before I go into the end questions, man, you have any saved rounds?
Don't die on Mount Stupid. Don't think you know everything, right? You start out not knowing nothing. You get 2 months in, you think you know everything. That's Mount Stupid. Don't die there, right? Be humble. You're gonna figure it out, but don't die on Mount Stupid, because if you get cocky and arrogant when you're, very new and you've got a little bit of knowledge under your belt, you think you know it all. And trust me, I was on Mount Stupid too. You got to push through it. You'll figure it out eventually, but just stay humble, keep your head down, and grind.
Hey man, I've sailed around Mount Stupid, and and I've climbed it too, man. It's like, ooh, look at that pretty mountain. Let me climb up it. Hey, like again, thanks for coming on here, man. A lot of people may not know this, but we grew up together. We have a lot of shenanigans back in the day.
You sure did.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go over into the last questions here. What books do you recommend people to read?
So, good old classic is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think anybody, I don't know, not even just in sales, but I mean, just if you want to be a good person, you should read that book and adopt some of the principles in it, because it talks about how to communicate with others, right? And in life, you need to be able to influence if you want to get what you want. So even if you're not in sales, that's a great book to read. I'm not a huge self-help book guy, so I would say that's a big one that I like. I know a lot of my guys like Never Split the Difference. That's a good book for learning some negotiating tactics. And then, personally, I think that if you can talk about things and you have things to talk about, you're going to be interesting, and you're going to have reasons to communicate with people. So in that sense, I read a lot of nonfiction history books. I've read quite a few books on the Constitution, on the founding fathers, on the advent of the golden age of newspaper media, and I think that if you can pick up a book that seems boring and it's nonfiction, I think you should read it, because it's going to give you some insight into something that you probably don't have right now.
Yeah, I read the book of 1812. Like, it's super thick. That was that was a really good book. Really good book. A lot of battle scenes, a lot of sea battles. I've never heard the Never Split the Difference, so I'm gonna add that to my own personal one. I also agree with you on the hey, don't just read. It's not about the amount of books that you read. So these good help books, they are good if you're actually reading them and then taking the material that you get from them and apply them to things.
Bingo.
I love I read the terminal list. I read all these different like action. I read all sorts of like, this not like the men's snuff books, I guess.
David Baldacci.
Yeah. just reading all these random books, but occasionally I'll sneak one that's like got some value to it. I have friends that send me books all the time, and recording 2 podcasts right now, I get a lot of different recommendations. So thanks for sharing those books, and I agree with you. Read history, man. If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self, I've had some pretty good answers on this. What would you tell yourself, or what would you do to yourself?
Don't do drugs.
You might want to go back further than 18 years.
Yeah. Gosh, I got kids at my office, right? I have a 20-year-old. I got a 21-year-old. I've got 23, 24-year-olds. Some of these guys are in their early 20s making $250,000 a year. So it's doable, right? And the mindset that they took versus the mindset that I had as a teenager, which was fuck you, school. I got a job at Guitar Center. I'm in a rock band. Yeah, this is sweet, Yeah, well, hey, I'm doing it now, but God, if I had 12 more years on top of it, I mean, that would be incredible, right? So if I could go back and talk to myself getting out of high school, I would have, been a lot bigger fan of paying attention, learning, rather than fighting back and arguing about everything. I think that starting early is really, really important. Um, you hear it all the time about investing early because of compounding interest, and that is a real thing, man. I mean, it is incredible how much wealth you could build if you start early. And not even just monetary wealth, but knowledge, wealth of knowledge. You start to learn, you take it seriously early on. That's an amazing amount of time when you're young, that if you can focus on learning those principles, then by the time you're into your mid 20s, you're a smooth, seasoned professional, and you're not, trying to figure it out anymore. I think a lot of us struggle through our 20s to find out who we are and what we want to do, and then finally get started on career life sometime in the, in your late mid 20s, and you're not really relevant until you're in your 30s. If you get going early, you know, the world is your oyster. And people say that, but it's like, you really can do anything you want to do. Nobody's smarter than you, not by much. All this shit that was put up around us, this is normal people. They just did it. So, I think a lot of us get worried and upset that we're not good enough. But the reality is that, nobody's good enough. They're just doing it.
Bro, that is exactly that's perfect, man. I like it because a lot of people don't understand, man. Like, I know when I was a kid, man, I wasn't quite ready. And when I say kid, 25 years old. Yeah, I had already bought a house. I was in the military. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan by the time I turned 25. And I was just not ready, like mentally. So everybody's, don't be hard on yourself if you're a late bloomer as well. And
Yeah.
to those early bloomers out there, hey, like, um, I want to reemphasize, you are your own worst enemy. Your
Yes.
self-doubt is your own worst enemy. You're going to get people hating on you, and that just means that you're doing something right.
100%. And that is the biggest thing. Just go do it. Nike has it right, man. Just do it. And I love what you said about the late bloomer thing too. Like, I don't want to get down on a late bloomer. I mean, I was a late bloomer, right? I went from line cook to running a multi-million-dollar business with 30 people working for me in 4 years.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter when you start. You just have to go do it.
One day I'm going to grow up. No, that's awesome, man. And that's why I'm so glad you came on here, man. How can everybody get a hold of you?
So I got a website. It's super fancy. You said you were looking at it. It's www.designwarealty.com. You can email me, kevin@designwarealty.com. You can find me on Facebook and shoot me a message. You can find me on Instagram and shoot me a message. And, hell, you can give me a call, 206-351-2174. So, I'm available, I'm responsive, and I'm happy to help share my knowledge and help you along your path.
Hey, and everyone, when you go to the episode, there will be links at the very bottom. Kevin, again, brother, dude, it's all every time we get together, man. I know I've been in the Navy, man. I've been all over the place, and we don't really keep in contact that well. But except for books of faces. But
Yes.
I do plan on moving back to the area, man. So, oh, and my family, they enjoyed the the pictures that you
The
had.
Santa pictures, yeah,
Oh
no,
yeah,
they came in and I saw it instantly. I was like, "Is your dad Chris?" Those kids look just like you, man.
bro, that is my replica. And then Sammy, is my wife's replica, man. So yeah,
They're super cute. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad they came in.
yeah, and they're full of energy, man. But I think that's all for the show. Anything else, man? Any more saved rounds?
I'm set. We're good. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, hey, everybody, it's not unicorns and rainbows, but hey, a little bit of hard work will get you there.
There you
Guys, take
go.
care now. I got a saved round and alibi here. It is again Return to Roots. It is releasing February 15th, 2023. It will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and many other social media websites. Please get out there, listen to it. It can help people in the long run. Our goal is to reduce homelessness and also suicides within the community. We are going to be talking about retention in the military. We're going to be talking about transition from the military and reintegration into the community. This podcast is not just for the service members, but also for the family unit dependents. Anybody that wants to help or say thank you for your service and put it to action, listen to the podcast. It will help you find ways to do so. You guys have a great day. Chart Your Fire is not an affiliate and does not represent the views of the Department of Defense and or the Department of the Navy. All views are that of the host and the guests that are brought onto the show. This information is meant to be in general, so do your own research before you implement it. This is not financial advice and is meant for educational purposes. If you need financial advice, look it up on Mass Chief Google or hire a reputable financial advisor. Alone we are weak. Together we are strong. In unity there is strength.